Rifftrax. Never pick tracks, better riffs on this end. Why you always gotta pick Rifftrax? It's your lucky day, it's time for Rifftrax.
Hello, I'm Faith, and welcome to Faith's Take, where I talk about anything and everything that I find interesting. And welcome to my new series of every Rifftrax short reviewed. So far on my channel, my favorite video that I did was my top 10 Rifftrax shorts back a couple weeks ago for my big project that I was doing. I had such a fun time making it, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. It also seems to be the one that you guys enjoyed the most as well, and I've really been trying to think of a way to talk about more of the Rifftrax shorts. So I thought, I'm just going to talk about all of them. So, with over 250 to go, and who knows how many being released until I can catch up. This is going to be a nice long series. It's going to be very similar to the top 10 videos I was doing, except instead of in 10s, I'm doing it in 5s. But overall, the format's about the same. I will be giving them all a rating as well. I've never seen a bad Rifftrax short, and I've seen almost all of them. So I'm going to have a 5-point grading scale with good, great, awesome, fantastic, and spectacular. And if I give something like a 2.5 or something, if I give a half point, you guys can come up with your own adjective for that. But let's see, I think that's all the stuff I needed to get out for this. Basically, instead of it being in my own, favorite top 10 order, it's just going to be in chronological order, starting all the way back in 2006 to 2016 or beyond if it takes me that long. Alright, so let's finally dive right into this. Every Rifftrax short reviewed. Number 1. NESTOR the Long-Eared Christmas Donkey from December 19th, 2006.
NESTOR! He's not answering because technically his name is NESTOR the Long-Eared Christmas Donkey.
NESTOR was made by Rankin Bass, the same company that made the Rudolph Christmas special, and it definitely shows. Not just in the animation, but also in the story. This is, in fact, the Rudolph story all over again. Just instead of a red nose, he has long ears, instead of a reindeer, it's a donkey, and instead of helping Santa, he helps Jesus. This is the first entry in the Rifftrax Shorts roster, and the only one ever riffed by one riffer alone. Yes, Mike takes this Christmas tale on solo.
But as for Santa's donkey, well, it's sort of a night off.
That figures.
What?
I didn't say anything.
You never knew Santa had a donkey?
No, if I said anything, it was that I didn't care whether or not Santa had a donkey.
You want to know more about NESTOR? Can't say I blame you.
Wait, no, I never...
They made him all wrong. He didn't look like that at all.
He was plastic, not wooden.
For the glory of the Roman Empire!
Except for Cappadocia. That place is a dump!
Finding a sheltered spot, NESTOR's mama dug away the snow until she came to the winter grass underneath.
Then she told NESTOR to beat it and find his own spot.
I loved this one, and this was actually the first time I'd ever seen it. Admittedly, I was a little worried about Mike flying solo, because one of the great things about riffing is when the guys bounce off of each other. But of course, he does a wonderful job.
Those ears. Longest gall-darned ears ever grew on a donkey.
Almost as big as Kate Hudson's ears.
It was the custom on the longest night of winter to hold a celebration. And this happy time was called
NESTOR Mocking Night.
Solstice. Yeah, it was the same old story.
I should probably just give up and let you go home.
Come back here, you!
Nice work on the hat. Did you bobble stitch that?
He was taken in by a desert merchant, a dealer in animals, and brought to a stable filled with camels and donkeys.
Where he was beaten and
He was
mocked.
so funny
Merry
looking,
Christmas.
Nobody wanted to...
This is a really fun Christmas jaunt that I definitely recommend with a 4 out of 5. Make sure to check it out and see where all these crazy shorts got started.
NESTOR's ears are lovely as a reindeer's nose is red.
Yeah, keep trying to tie it into that more beloved product. No matter how much you try, it doesn't make it more beloved.
Number 2, A Visit to Santa, from December 20th, 2007.
I'm suspicious of movies made by guys named Clem.
An entire year after the first Rifftrax short comes A Visit to Santa. It fascinates me that the first two shorts were, firstly, so far apart, and secondly, both about Christmas. Here we see Santa letting 2 little kids visit his workshop so he can show it off.
No trip to Santaland would be complete without a tour of the village toy shop. The good little elves.
Joey, the one-man elf parade.
For little girls, a doll is fun to wash, to dress, and spank.
Spanking feature not available in Sweden.
Every doll must have a head and also have a body.
But no soul.
Here they make the tinsel and the Christmas tree ornaments.
Improbably, it's like a worse version of It's a Small World After All.
In this look, while others paint their saucy faces and put them all together.
I've seen saucier faces on Lego men.
You know, and I don't approve of toys building other toys. Just strikes me as kind of an unholy abomination. And that's all.
Elves and a toy piano or a drum will give them hours of fun.
Hours meaning minutes.
Look, a toy coal mine.
And toy union strike busters.
The audio on the opening dialogue is so terrible that I had to listen to it at least 3 times to finally decipher it.
Yes, children.
I'm sorry, kid, I didn't catch that. The hell, are they speaking in tongues? I swear, it's like some Carpathian dialect.
This production was also so cheap that Santa's throne room is obviously someone's den.
The North Pole, ladies and gentlemen, a split-level ranch in Pasadena.
But Dick and Ann are hurried to the castle entrance.
At the Woodfield Mall.
There it is.
What, behind the painting?
This is a good entry, being the first to have all the guys, but I think I've been spoiled by the 2009 live version they did. It has most of the same jokes, and their energy is just so high. Because of this, I'm giving this one a solid 2 out of 5.
Merry Christmas! Merry Christmas to all! Merry Christmas!
May your toy organ always be dissonant and have a very creepy Christmas.
Number 3, Act Your Age, from February 1st, 2008.
For instance.
So one side of a fellow's personality could be grown up,
Wrong.
and another still infantile.
Wrong.
Is that right?
No, wrong.
Here we hit the first educational short, keeping in the same vein as all the classic fan favorites from MST3K. We follow this weird teenager who carves his initials into his desk at school with a pencil. He gets sent to the principal, who suggests that the kid should start acting his age. He then becomes obsessed with this and begins assessing himself and everyone else around him based on their physical and emotional ages.
There are a great many young people in the school, Jim. Each is an individual, but in one important way, they're all alike.
They're white.
They're all growing up.
As white people.
Growing up is a problem.
We must stamp it out.
A boy batting struck out, and what a fuss he made. He was a young man in years.
Despite looking like Chris Cooper.
Was more in keeping with a 5-year-old.
Son of a...
When you see a child do the same, why does he still behave as a child?
Why does he still watch Teletubbies?
How can... I guess scratching a desk spoils it for others, too. Why can't I act my age, eh?
Because you're Canadian, eh?
Why can't I act my age? That's a good one.
Is it?
Hey, act your age.
Or at least your IQ number.
Remember what Bill did yesterday. He was sitting right there.
There's his ghost right now.
Once he finally resolves to grow up himself, he goes back to the principal to talk things over, because I'm sure the principal has nothing more important to do.
There's the boy who constantly shows off to gain attention.
From his fellow Paul Lynde impersonators.
What we need is some method of measuring our growth, comparing various parts of our personalities.
Assuming we have one.
Hey, I'll wait until I know how old I am.
And if I have retractable claws and mutant healing ability. Bye.
They then formulate a plan that suggests we all begin judging ourselves as well as our friends and family members. Because if there's one thing that brings people closer together, it's judging each other's every word and deed.
How old am I?
Should I retire soon?
And by next year, I want to catch up with my real age.
11-3.
Everyone here should rate himself and have his friends rate him this way.
Constant criticism, that's the future.
A great dive into the world of bizarre educational shorts, I'm giving this one a 3 out of 5.
Our lesson today is criticize yourself relentlessly. Everyone else does anyway.
Beat them to the punch in hating you.
And march forever. Forever to your death. Good night.
Number 4, Beginning Responsibility, Lunchroom Manners, from February 22nd, 2008.
As each of Phil's friends finished, they didn't leave the table, but waited for all the others to finish eating too.
Hovering like vultures.
Phil was
one of my personal favorites. Here we see the first short of the Beginning Responsibility series. This installment begins with a creepy puppet show that teaches children how not to behave in the school cafeteria.
Mr. Bungle didn't stop to wash his hands or comb his hair. He went right to lunch.
Still, he was the cleanest person in the Taco Bell.
Mr. Bungle was so clumsy and impolite that he knocked over everything, and no one wanted to sit next to him.
So they ate off the floor.
Then, instead of getting into line at the lunchroom, Mr. Bungle pushed everyone aside and went right to the front.
As the biggest, it was his right.
After witnessing whatever the heck that was, the children seem to let the prospect of not being a Mr. Bungle direct every single one of their steps, and they become rather OCD.
Were his hands clean? No, they were a little dirty. Phil remembered that Mr. Bungle didn't wash his hands.
But Phil was in a hurry.
Mr. Bungle's hair was messy, too. Phil didn't want to be like Mr. Bungle.
He decided to shave his head and cut off his hands.
And then he made sure that his hair looked neat.
He was embarrassed how long and unkempt it had gotten.
Now, Phil and his friends were ready for lunch.
Just in time for class to begin again.
Phil noticed how straight and tall Freddie usually sat. Freddie kept his feet on the floor, too.
Hello, Freddie.
I mean, behaving well is one thing, but letting a
remember to
literal,
say
creepy
thank
puppet
you
master
when
control
he
every
took
one
the
of your
carton
thoughts
of
and
milk.
actions, that's a little
had
too
good
far.
He put his tray down carefully,
Daintily.
pulled out his chair quietly,
Bungle.
and sat down. He knew his friends wouldn't like a noisy Mr. Bungle at their table. He put his knife, fork, and spoon neatly on the tray. And then he slid his tray along.
Phil tried to whistle a tune to keep his mind off Mr. Bungle.
It's in my head.
He didn't want to be like Mr. Bungle in the lunchroom.
Mr. Bungle, Mr. Bungle, Mr. Bungle, Mr. Bungle.
It's in my head.
But Phil didn't want to be like Mr. Bungle.
No.
So he put his chair neatly into place.
Catastrophe averted.
Phil would rather be like Freddie than like Mr. Bungle.
Bungle.
No, Mr. Bungle sat here.
At least so they thought.
Bungle.
This one is just gut-bustingly hilarious throughout, and I couldn't recommend it enough. I give this a spectacular 5 out of 5.
Are you like Mr. Bungle?
Mr. Who?
Mr. Bungle is a shame because he spoils lunchtime.
He's quite pleasant at dinner.
I've heard that.
Mr. Bungle.
Number 5, The Terrible Truth, from February 28th, 2008.
Dope, but she could see how her story might be used to help others, and she began to talk.
It's okay, Judge, because I don't have a problem with drugs. I simply prefer them to living in the 50s. You understand?
I do, dear.
An after-school special which kids probably had to watch in school, we have a young woman tell us her tragic backstory. Several months previous, she got herself rather easily roped into the wrong crowd and became addicted to heroin.
Funny what it does to you. Everything speeds up to 100 miles an hour.
Except the Lucy show, which remains an unending nightmare.
All of a sudden it hit me. If Chuck had seen the cops coming, he might have got rid of our supply.
But then I remembered Chuck is a heroin addict. Our supply was probably where it always was, in the bag labeled heroin, right in the cabinet labeled heroin.
In the heroin room.
Right.
Girls take up street walking or do what I did. Become peddlers themselves.
Unfortunately, I chose to peddle heroin be gone.
But before I knew it, I was hooked.
And I gotta say, there were no downsides. Everything since I got off drugs has paled in comparison. What's that? Oh, right. It was a nightmare, a treadmill I couldn't get off of, right?
5 days, and I didn't care whether I lived or died.
A typical reaction after having seen Daddy Day Camp.
But when you're hooked, you can't help yourself.
You start dressing like Mamie Eisenhower.
If you're hooked bad, it costs about $30 a day for each.
If I give up flamin' hot Cheetos, I can just about afford that.
It's good, Bill.
Maybe what happened to me will keep it from happening to somebody else.
Or more probably, it will make them say, hey, that's pretty cool.
Oddly, even though the girl is the one telling the story, it's a story within a story being told to us by an old man who interviewed her. This setup gives me flashbacks to Reefer Madness, where a story about addiction was told by a virtually unrelated third party. Do all drug-related stories have to be told like this?
This is Phyllis as she looked 6 months ago, a senior in high school, pretty as a picture.
An average-looking picture.
Recently, there are practically no happy endings when you fool with drugs.
Oh, sure, you can win Grammys, but who wants a Grammy?
In the Far East a few years back, they were lining up dope peddlers and shooting them in the back of the head.
Of course, they also do that for parking infractions.
Well, that's Phyllis's story. In the United States of America, 20th century.
Yeah, you would expect this kind of thing from the Habsburgs in 1381, maybe.
Typical. Remember what happened to Phyllis and others like her.
She seems fine. You know, she's got a cool story to
She
tell.
looks better.
Yeah.
The first and definitely not last time the guys will be knee-deep in drugs, this one gets a 2 out of 5 for me.
Let's make tomorrow's headlines read like this.
You got that, you stupid, ghastly, tragic, commie dopeheads? Go to hell!
God bless now.
Now, I know when I finished my big Rifftrax Mystery Science project last month, I said it'd be more like every other week or so I'd have a Mystery Science or Rifftrax related video, but with this and a Mystery Science project coming up soon, it seems like it's pretty much what this channel's gonna be. I am super excited for it. I've just loved making these so much and interact with all you guys, so buckle up because we've got a lot coming. Thank you so much, as always, for watching, and I will see you guys later.
It's time for Rifftrax.